Inappropriate tweets, apologies, death threats, all in the space of a week. Oh, we're going to talk about that and a lot more. This is Russell. Yo, this is WrstlXtra. I'm your boy, A Dazzle, the Black Wrestling Advocate, joined by my tag team partner, the man that knows it all, the professor. Say his name, he shall appear. It is Gerard Bonner. How's your week been, my friend?
It has been a busy but very good week. I've got zero complaints. It's been a great week. How about yourself?
Oh, another busy week. A stressful weekend as always, but wrestling is here to make me feel
Wrestling
better.
is here.
Or
Absolutely.
does it?
Yeah.
We'll talk about it.
Right. Oh, yeah.
God. Speaking of stressful days, stressful week, the biggest story within our community at the minute has been this whole thing of Ricochet and his conduct on Twitter, as well as fans and those of the internet wrestling community. Their conduct as well has been questionable in many ways. Let's go to the backstory. We kind of mentioned it last week as well. I think the tweet happened possibly. I think it was the Monday evening before we went on air last week, Tuesday. We spoke about it in a little bit on the show, but then more kind of happened after that as well. We know that Ricochet responded to a few tweets following him losing his AEW National Championship. The way that he played out, his anger and stuff was then, people being happy about it, him losing the championship and stuff like that. Not the biggest problem on the planet, but then it was Ricochet's response to one of them. Of course, someone who is situated in Canada who has MS. Ricochet responded with, "I'm glad you have MS." Something that seemed very inappropriate to even just what they said and to how they responded to him losing his championship. And we were saying that, at some point, AEW needs to step in and have a word with Ricochet about his conduct on Twitter and stuff like that. And it seems as though that has happened. A day or two later, Ricochet then apologized for that tweet. But then what then followed that, and has been happening for a while, to Ricochet and his wife, Samantha Irvin, are death threats, just completely unnecessary stuff, and it ended up with Samantha Irvin, disabling her Twitter account, but then she then shared some of the messages on her Instagram story. Reading some of them was just like, what in the hell? It was, along the lines of, your husband has done this, so we're coming for you, and be aware of your husband. We're going to come for him, and kept talking about death and killing someone and harming and all the rest of it. It's all just gone haywire and over the top. Let's go back a little bit to the apology first of all. Do you feel as though this apology came from Ricochet himself, or maybe AEW or the powers that be kind of asking him to apologize for what he did?
So there have been a number of reports that have stated that somebody contacted him and said, "Hey, dude, this is not cool. You need to apologize." Now, who the somebody is, we don't know. It could have been someone from AEW. It could have been someone with some degree of influence. But I think everybody is in line with the idea that the apology didn't necessarily come from him looking and going, "Hey, these are the errors of my ways." It was someone saying, "Hey, that wasn't cool. You need to apologize." Now, here's what's interesting about this. Tons of fans said the same thing. But whomever this person was, I mean, this mystery is becoming like the Randy Orton mystery at this point. You know, it's like, who is it that's on the phone? We don't know who that person was. Whoever that person was influential enough for Ricochet to you know, issue an apology. Here's how you know things got way out of hand. When TMZ starts reporting about this, like, this isn't a move that happened. This isn't something that happened on television. This is not, you know, a story or promotion for an upcoming event. This was, again, something that should not have happened, but it was all the hubbub on the IWC. So when he grabbed it, it was obviously a problem. Now, we live in a world where people need to understand that two wrongs do not make a right. So, yes, Ricochet absolutely wrong in, you know, tweeting something as just horrible as that. The man makes an apology. Now, for a lot of us, and you know, I think the Me Too era, the cancel culture era led us to this particular point, which is when a person apologizes, now we are trying to measure the authenticity of the apology. I really believe the authenticity of any apology shows up in changed action. So, you know, people could say, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. The question is your behavior going to be different that proves that I'm sorry? That's another podcast for another day. People didn't give Ricochet that opportunity to prove that he's behaving different. Instead, they went deep into their deplorable bag and started issuing death threats and all of these other things. It just says we live in a horrible world, and I just don't understand why human decency is not nearly as common as it was in previous eras of the world. And perhaps this is the issue with people having so much access to their favorite entertainers, athletes, and the like, because people say a bunch of things that they would never say in person, but even if they did say it in person, they wouldn't act on it. And with all of that said, you have to take all of those things seriously because there are crazy people out here. So I'm sorry that Samantha Irvin and Ricochet had to deal with the death threats. I think people have to understand you can be unhappy with somebody, you can choose not to like what they're doing, but it doesn't have to result in death threats and, you know, threatening people's livelihoods and things like that. That's just inappropriate. It's out of bounds. It's never going to be right. And it's one of the reasons why wrestling fans, unfortunately, get the bad rap that we do, is because there are people who act crazy and do silly things, whether it's this, and it's hard to take these things not seriously when same said wrestling fans are going to camp out at people's hotels and, you know, mess with them at the airport and not give them privacy or just human decency to do simple things like travel from work home and travel from home to work. Like, you know, again, if you take wrestling out of it, how would any of you feel by somebody being upset with one of your decisions and they decide, hey, we're going to follow you home? Hey, we like you or dislike you so much that we need to follow you home. It's not enough to see you at work. I got to see you at home. It's too much. It's too much. We got to do better.
Yeah, and that's the thing, you know. I know that this whole death threats or inappropriate messaging, or you know, invasion of privacy, all these kinds of things, we've seen it happen. We've heard the stories. It happened to Liv Morgan quite recently, you know, and a few others. Ricochet has talked about it a number of times, as well as Samantha Irvin a number of times.
Yeah.
I guess the most recent bigger issue was not so much this one, but when they, you know, both left the WWE and the way they were treated and how they were talked about. all these types of things. And you're just like, what is the point? So when I think one of Ricochet's responses, one of his first responses to people responding to his inappropriate message was, you know, along the lines of, it's funny how some people can give it but can't take it. And I understand that mindset. I understand that mindset of getting to a point where you can't take it anymore. And you're like, okay, you know what? If these people are going to give it to me, I'm going to give it to them back. He went too far. Yes, he did. But I understand that frustration and all the rest of it. I guess, and it's something that we said last week, I guess that he's in a position, or he's in an expected position to handle it, deal with it better. Because at the end of the day, if he doesn't have the persona that he has on Twitter, it doesn't then encourage those types of messages to keep on happening. Not to say it's going to stop altogether, but at the same time, it gives people a freedom or a feeling as though they can do this because he's going to respond the same way, or he's going to say something too much, or he's going to say something derogatory. So I can say it too.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, so where does it end? But the thing is, the place where it will end, or can end, or the easiest place for it to end would be with Ricochet.
Sure.
And maybe that's an unfair position for him to be in. It might be, but at the same time, it is the only way. So I guess, you know, he has to take responsibility for that part of this whole.
I think people have to understand that part of the responsibility of being a public figure, no matter what genre you are in, the responsibility is you have to take the higher road, period. Because here's what people don't think about. All these people want is a response. They want to be able to say, hey, I got under Ricochet's skin so much that he responded to me. That's all they want. They're going to frame that. They're going to make a whole thing out of it. And it's like, guys, we have to be smarter as public figures to recognize, hey, listen, everything does not deserve a response. If you feel like you need to get it out, get yourself a personal group chat, find yourself some friends somewhere where you can just express all of that. But that doesn't come onto the public space because, again, they're not the ones often in danger. It's often you. You know, you're the one that could lose your job. You're the one that could lose your space of influence because you don't respond well. These fans and whoever these detractors are, like they just want, I remember, you know, and I don't consider myself that much of a public figure. Some people might, but, you know, when I started my radio station several years ago, there were people who didn't like what I was playing. They didn't like it. So they'd start going off and saying crazy things. And I remember responding one time, and I knew that, like, okay, you're talking crazy. As soon as I respond, this whole group of people who support me are coming for you. And I remember the one day when I looked and I said, wait a minute, this person has 20 followers. What exactly am I doing? I'm putting them on a stage that they want to be on, and they're trying to maximize my platform for their exposure. So as the Undertaker said, you know, Undertaker says, I'm gonna make you famous. No, I'm not going to make you famous. And I think that most of these celebrities and public figures of any kind have to get to the space where they realize the juice isn't worth the squeeze. Putting these people on a stage that you've created or that has been created for you, only to just get into a war of who's more petty, who's right, who's not. Listen, most of these people can't even spell accurately and don't know how to use proper grammar. Why am I going to sit up here and then respond to their foolishness when I can't even read it because the words aren't spelled right? I think celebrities have to get to the space where they go, it's not worth it. If you get upset about it, go work out, go have a group chat, you know, talk to somebody about it, but you don't have to get on a public forum and address it unless we're getting to these stupid spaces where they are, you know, trying to threaten you and all of that foolishness.
And
even then,
I
you
guess
get the law involved.
Yeah, Right. I guess this is where the issue comes with this specific issue as well, is that, you know, while we can talk about efforts being inappropriate and all the rest of it, and they are, and there's no refuting that. I don't think there's any kind of way to justify it at all. The problem with this specific issue is that Ricochet said something inappropriate. That's the problem. Now, with your example, and with examples that I could even bring up for myself, it's that we didn't say anything to provoke. So when we're then putting them out on blast or whatever it is, it's just that. Whereas, unfortunately, people can turn around and say, "Oh, but Ricochet said da 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 da." Then the argument kind of, it's not the best argument. Again, it doesn't justify. There's nothing that can justify people being sending death threats, especially to Samantha Irving, who had absolutely nothing to do with the situation. You know what I mean? Her being married to him doesn't make a difference. Doesn't change anything at all. So it's just difficult, man. People need to be better with how they interact on the internet. But like you said, the problem comes where we're in this era of the world where everything's accessible. Everything seems to be attainable. People feel the need to be able to say whatever they want, whenever they want, because they're hiding behind the keyboard, because they're hiding behind their phone, because they're not saying it in front of someone in their face. They probably wouldn't even. Most of them wouldn't even say a word. So it's a scary place to be. But fortunately, whether fairly or unfairly, the buck stops with Ricochet in this specific space, and that's just the truth. There was talk of the possibility of further, reprimand coming from AEW, probably even Warner Brothers above AEW as well. Do you feel that that's still appropriate for Ricochet? Do you still feel as though something more needs to be done in this situation?
Well, the interesting thing is we don't know what or if they've done anything, and I think this is one of the challenges of a relatively new company, that you don't have certain standards and practices in place. And granted, some would say what's happening on the socials is new technology and the like, but certainly when we're talking about social media, AEW has been around since 2019. They built their company on social media. So there should be things in place in terms of standards and practices, in terms of how we behave in these spaces. That should already exist. But if it doesn't, situations like this should cause it to. But again, there have been plenty of other situations that should have. But I still go back to, if a man can be hired one day and lose his job the next because of social media that you found from years ago, why don't we have that same energy for someone who tweets it days ago? That is the inconsistency that we have. And please understand, I'm not up for people losing their jobs. Everybody's got to eat. Everybody's got to work. Everybody's got to make a living. I think there's also a level of responsibility that comes with that. So, there should be, if there wasn't, something that's done. Does he have to go to some sort of tolerance classes? Does he have to, understand inclusion and, all of those, like something has to be done or should be done. Other than that, if it's just you have to deal with the public reprimand, please, what's the point? When people understand that there are consequences from spaces that matter, because that's the other lesson in this, is that when the people said, hey, this isn't right, he doubled down. But when some person of influence spoke to him, that's when he was like, oh, let me go ahead and apologize. So, yeah, I think it is appropriate for, the business to do something. I don't know if it's necessarily that he loses his job, but something, and maybe they did and we didn't know about it. And if they did, kudos to them. But I just think that since you already set a precedent just a few months ago, on how you handle this with people coming in. You have to do something for those who are already there, who do this recently and not from 5 or 6 years ago.
I think for me, the one way to deal with this is in a very similar as to how they dealt with Sammy Guevara in the past. In terms of taking him off TV, sending to some kind of, classes, training, whatever it was called. Something like that for me would be okay. I don't want to see someone lose their job. I don't think it's right that Trey Miguel didn't get, had his contract cancelled. I thought that was ridiculous. But I don't think Ricochet losing his job is appropriate either. At the same time, I think we still need to see something happen. And whether they make it a public announcement or not, I don't think that has to happen either. But at the same time, I still feel as though there is something that we kind of need to see to kind of have a feeling that something has taken place. But I think only time will tell with that. We'll see what happens. As you said, we don't know whether he will be placed by AEW or just someone. It was said that the former Cassius Ono, Chris Hero, was apparently someone that has spoken to him. And I think Ricochet also deleted the tweet following that. So I don't know whether that was him that influenced the apology as well or not. We just don't know at this point. But I guess we'll maybe find out. Maybe we won't. Who knows? Who knows? Moving away from this, but another unanswered question that's been flying around the IWC for the last couple of days, I guess. Is this change in gimmick of a one Lio Rush? We saw him. We saw it kind of manifest, and I guess that's the best word to use as well. Manifest during actually Ricochet's last appearance on AEW, which was the Battle Royal match for what used to be Ricochet's AEW National Championship at Revolution last week, Sunday gone, the week before. And we've seen it again this week when Lio Rush faced Tommaso Ciampa. And I'm seeing mixed responses from the IWC. I want to know what your take is on this freakish like Lio Rush that we are seeing in the ring right
now. Oh boy. First of all, I think that anytime someone undergoes a degree of a gimmick change, there should be some explanation. Whether it's written in a storyline, an interview, something. We just saw this happen with Tony D'Angelo, where he went from, the Don of NXT to now he's a vigilante. Suddenly the Italian accent is gone, but he doesn't have his, but at the very least, he stood in the middle of a ring and said, hey, I've been gone for a few months. And while I was gone and I didn't have my family, here are the things that have happened. There has to be some sort of explanation so that fans can be on the journey. Now, granted, no, Lio Rush was not a main event star or whatever in AEW, but he was, the last time we saw him, he was part of a group called The Crew. Right. So he was part of a tag team. They had the 90s Missy Elliott jackets on, they were doing their thing. Suddenly the man comes back. First of all, he's bald, which anytime, here's the thing in wrestling. Anytime you have any degree of a cosmetic change, it's a thing. You dye your hair, you lose your hair, you add a mustache, you add a beard, all of those things really matter. So I remember looking at, the pre-show for Revolution 0 Hour, and I was like, what is this in the ring? Not even who is this? What is this? Because he's bald, his eyes look different, he's screeching, he's crawling around like a gargoyle. What is going on? So My personal thoughts is I hate it. I hate it. I don't think it's necessary. And here's why I don't think it's necessary. I think Lio Rush's career has been one where, I mean, going back to his time in Ring of Honor, he's always been a bit of a standout because he's so athletic. There was a moment where he was ahead of the business in terms of his athleticism. Now I think the business has caught up to him. And in some cases, the argument could be made the business has moved past him. So you're trying to figure out, what do I do? And especially in a place like AEW, where it seems like everybody does what he does right now. The only thing that he has that's different is being faster than most. So a gimmick change, not necessarily a bad idea because you want to stand out. However, here's the thing that people don't seem to understand. Part of what makes pro wrestling special is if there is a significant dose of truth inside of what you're doing. Case in point, you take Stone Cold Steve Austin when he was the ringmaster. Nobody really believed him. He was stunning Steve. They kind of believed it, but he comes in like the ringmaster. He doesn't talk. He just does these technical moves. Nobody pays attention to him. Suddenly he becomes Stone Cold, and Austin 316 shows up, and he's one of the top selling stars of all time because there was a big part of who he was in that. Same thing for The Rock when he's Rocky Maivia and he's trying to smile and kiss the babies. Nobody liked him. But when he flipped and he started introducing elements of himself, everybody loves The Rock. If The Rock shows up anywhere, the people are going to go crazy. There always has to be an element of truth. And what concerns me about this is, sir, have you literally sold your soul to the devil so that you can have some sort of popularity in the world of pro wrestling? Now, listen, I'm not telling you have to come out and, preach a sermon. I don't think that's necessary. But I also don't think going to this end is necessary either. It's very dangerous. And here's why I say it's dangerous, because when you get too involved in a particular thing, you become that. We hear stories all the time of wrestlers who, when they come home, don't know how to turn it off because it's a part of who they are. You cannot do certain things without embracing what the thing actually is. So personally, I don't rock like that. I don't play with stuff like that. I text a couple of my brothers. I'm like, does someone need to do an intervention for Lio Rush? Like, does somebody need to go cast the devil out? Like, it's that kind of thing, okay? And you'll tap into another side of me if you mess with me long enough. I'm just like this. I don't think it's necessary in pro wrestling. Now, I want you to hear me good, to go to either extreme, right? Like when Jake the Snake, and I want to be clear with this, when Jake the Snake went from being Jake the Snake to trying to be a born-again Christian on television, nobody believed him because you're Jake the Snake. I get it. You're over the alcoholism and things, but that character did not thrive. In fact, that birthed Austin 316, and nobody remembers that. They remember Austin 316. They don't remember Jake being the one that was the impetus for that. And so anytime we've seen a character that portrays a Christian or anything religious, it doesn't go well. Let's go another place. Papa Shango, right? Like, that didn't go well. Bray Wyatt. Think about what's happened with the Wyatt Six. Wyatt Six, we didn't quite figure out what their deal is. Now they're just wrestlers. They don't even do the super spooky entrance anymore. At the end of the day, pro wrestling is about connecting with people and people being able to either see themselves or you become extremely noticeable. But anytime in pro, you cannot name a pro wrestling character that had any dose of religion one way or another and found themselves to be successful. You can't find it. And I dare somebody to try. You know, it just doesn't happen because those kinds of things don't now, if the person is a religious person outside of the wrestling ring and every now and again they come up with something and say something or whatever, people can deal with that in a podcast interview or whatever. But on their television screens, no. So I think it's not going to bode well, and I'm actually concerned about Lio Rush the person.
I've got a different take. I actually think he does it very, very, very well.
He does it too well.
I think he works very well. Yeah, possibly. That might be the
that's the issue for me.
As well, yeah, he does it so well. That is very true, to be honest. But I think for me, the issue really is that it's come out of absolutely nowhere. Now, granted, I was hoping that even coming on the show, because I don't keep up with AEW week to week or whatever, or maybe ROH or anything that the crew might have been doing. Maybe I missed something. I'm hoping that I'm probably going to get some kind of answer or something. But it seems as though nobody knows.
No.
And that's, for me, that's the problem. The character, I think he does it very well. And yes, maybe a bit too well. The whole running on all fours, my God. Wow. It's good. Too good.
I mean, it stands out. So if the idea is to stand out from the rest, 100%.
Of course. But unfortunately, there's been no development to this character. So if it was a thing where he was having trouble, or someone, say if this was WWE, and you had like an Aleister Black or a Karrion Kross of before in his ear every week, and then corrupting him, and then eventually, boom, we get this guy. Makes sense. Or he's gone on a losing streak and whatever, and he decides, okay, you know what, I've had enough. Then we get what we get. Fair enough. But this out of nowhere thing is, it's going. I think it's only going to be detrimental because, and I think this might be the AEW problem, as we know that the wrestlers seem to, it's been well documented. The wrestlers seem to have more creative control in AEW than in a WWE. So if they come up with something and it gets passed, it's more likely to get passed, and there's not always going to be an explanation. It's not always going to be the decision of a Tony Khan or whoever the producers and the bookers are. So they're not necessarily going to back it. They're going to allow someone to do something, but not necessarily back it, which then to me means it's not going to last long, because there's not going to be that care, that a reason to add to the story, give it some substance, give him some proper storylines, all that kind of stuff. It's just, oh, you want to do this? Oh, it sounds all right. Let me see what it looks like. Oh, wow, that looks good. Yeah, go ahead. That's what it feels like, and that's, for me, a problem. And it's a shame because I've always been a fan of Lio Rush and his abilities, what he does in the ring, and all of that. For me, at one point, to me, he was like literally one of the best in the ring that there was, or could have been, had the potential to be. And that's still there. But as very, very, very much to what you said earlier, is that there are so many other people that can do exactly what he does as well, some even better. So it's going to be very difficult for him to stand out or, get to that top echelon, I guess, of the card, and which is a shame. So this kind of feels almost like desperation. And it's so far desperate and not backed, not supported, that it's not, I just don't see it lasting long. That's the problem.
No, I agree. It's and again, the lack of explanation. The lack of explanation is something that just doesn't make any sense. You can't go to this level of a character without an explanation, because again, you don't have anything that connects us. The whole thing is we've got to be connected. And so even if it's designed to scare people, like think about when The Undertaker was introduced, scared a lot of people, but then we got explanations. And then we started to realize, okay, this dude is different. you know. And again, it wasn't anything specifically religious. It was, oh, this dude, he's an undertaker. He likes dead people. Okay. It all made sense. But I think because it doesn't make sense, it's just like, and again, how many of these people, I'd love to know what the goal is. Like if the goal is to
That's what I'm saying.
stand out,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like if the goal is to stand out, okay, great. But if the goal is to win a championship, don't know.
I mean, the way the championships work in AEW, how much space
Right.
for him to win anyway. It's a crazy one. It's a crazy one. It's a crazy one. Keeping with AEW, something else that kind of maybe needs not necessarily an explanation, but I want to see if this thing is working. And I'm talking about Mercedes MONE. Of course, we know Mercedes MONE held 12, 20, 30 championships at the same time at one point. You know, taking them from many independent wrestling promotions around the world. Most of them were in Europe. But recently, since she lost the ROH Women's Television Championship, then the TBS Championship, she's been kind of on this losing streak of losing these championships. Do you think that this looks good for Mercedes? What is the motive? What is working with this whole thing? And is there something missing if it isn't working?
I think the idea here is this is her attempt to give back to the business. And so by attempting to give back, you know, you win all these championships, but at some point you have to lose them. And it's interesting because the people that she beat, we all said, oh, makes sense that she beat them. Like they're not on necessarily Mercedes caliber. So then when people come back and start beating her, it elevates them to a space. I think my concern with it, obviously, you know, there's no way she can keep 12 championships forever. But this streak of losing is somewhat taking me back to the Sasha Banks days where she couldn't hold on to a championship, you know, where she had a title for 30 days or 25 days and was easily beatable. Now, granted, you could say she's held these titles for however long, but once you get into this kind of losing streak, believe it or not, there's actually a story that can be involved in this. You know, if this is a space where she walks away from AEW to go defend these championships and she's losing them left and right, the CMLL World Championship, you know, the Ring of Honor Championship, TNT, TBS Champion, all of these, she's losing them. The question now becomes, okay, who am I? You know, who's the real Mercedes MONE? Is it the one who went and dominated New Japan and was undefeated in AEW for 2 years? Or is it me? That crisis of confidence is something that the people can relate to. And maybe it turns Mercedes MONE into, you know, someone that people love, or at least it gives you some compassion for the heel in all of this, which, you know, is good storytelling. So the question will become, what story do they make of this? You know, do we now get to see Mercedes MONE down and on the comeback trail to perhaps finally becoming the AEW Women's World Champion? If they tell the story right, it could be a great story of redemption for her. But I think there's a story in all of this. The question is, who's going to tell it?
And I know that when she had all of these championships, and she has said that the goal is to elevate women's wrestling and stuff like that, we were questioning whether her taking these championships from these women was the right way to go and all the rest of it. But we did say that when it came to her losing the championships, it would elevate certain women,
For sure.
or the women that would beat her for all of these championships. The thing for me is that since she lost that the ROH TV Championship to Red Velvet, I don't think she's won a match since. Probably only, I think she's defended the one of the UK championships at one point, but it's losing streak. The last 3 weeks, she's lost 3 championships. And because it's happening on the Indies, we're not hearing a story or anything on AEW. She's not been on AEW TV since December. So it's like, okay, so what's happening? I'm gonna run through some of the championships that she's lost. She got Red Velvet, the RH TV Championship, Women's TV Championship. Alexis Windsor, she lost the Rev Pro Women's Championship to her. We know that she lost the AEW TBS to Willow Nightingale. She lost the CMLL Women's Championship to Persephone.
Right.
And these are the ones that have happened literally last 3 weeks. That unless you're trying to follow, you're not going to know. So she lost the Bestia Women's Championship, which is based in Italy, to a female called Swan. Never heard of her. She lost the EWA Women's Championship. I think that's the European Wrestling Association Women's Championship to Mila Smith, who is French. And just last weekend gone, she lost the Body Slam stroke DW. I think it's like 2 championships to Alexis Falcon at I think it was a Progress show, or actually no, that was also a Rev Pro show as well. And I think this is the issue here, is that these are all happening. This is all happening, but we don't know. Do you feel as though there's a space now that we're hearing that Tony Storm's going to be out of AEW for a while? Not sure why. Apparently, it's not injury related. And there's this call for someone else to kind of step in that space, or there's no big, massive female name to fill the void. Apparently, there's those people they could do it with, but apparently that's the talk. Do you feel now that it might be a right time for Mercedes to come back into AEW, and we get this development of this story of a crisis of confidence, and could possibly push her towards winning the AEW Women's Championship finally?
Yeah, I don't know that it happens this second. I think it happens, because what you just described is 7 different championships that she's lost.
Yep.
So if her count was, if her count was, I can't remember if it was 13 or 14, but she's basically lost at least half of her championships. That crisis of confidence, which says, I can't win. By the time she returns to AEW, she needs to come back with 0 belts. When she comes back with 0 belts, now the story is, okay, so what? And commentary can do a good job of this. AEW ought to grab a bit of footage from these places to show her losing these titles and all these things, and have her in that crisis of confidence, which just says, wow, I don't know what's happening to me. There's got to be some sympathy built for her. And the sympathy can, in a wild way, there are a number of ways they could go with this. They could go with kind of, I'm going to find my way back, and she's trying dirty tactics and that doesn't work. Or they could go the Baron Corbin route, when he, he lost all his money. He was just disheveled. Like, think about it. A disheveled Mercedes Moné?
Yep.
We've never seen that before. Have her coming out, she's not doing the dance, the CEO music plays, but she doesn't have that same swagger. She comes down. I mean, we're seeing this crisis of confidence right now with Johnny Gargano, because he lost his tag team partner. He's lost everything. He's just, I think they've got opportunity to tell a great story with Mercedes, that as they stand in need of a great hero on the women's side, and Chris Statlander clearly is not it. Mercedes can now come in and, look at this as a story. Can you imagine a Willow Nightingale and, her tag team partner, Harley Cameron, coming to the aid of Mercedes, saying, girl, listen, I know you've been rough. I know, but things turn around. Things get better. you know,
Mm,
like
mm,
that
mm.
kind of thing, you know, and it would be something that, and then have her build to the point where she takes on Tekla and her confidence comes back with a couple of wins, you know, with random people to get her back in the space. And then she wins some sort of #1 contender situation. And
Mhm.
now we almost get this Rocky moment where you now follow her training and she's getting her confidence back. She's gearing up and she's practicing and all those things. Like, you tell that story. So now when we
Mhm.
get to the pay-per-view and it's time for the world title match, we now get the Mercedes showing up, you know, that is confident again, that knows who she is, you know. And I think it's a music change. I think we don't go with CEO. We go with something
Yep. True.
else, you know, and because that CEO boss mentality can't be the way. It has to be
Mhm.
something a bit more humble, something that, because remember, let's think about this. The little girls still want to love Mercedes.
Yep. Of
And
course.
in the
Of
way
course.
she's been presenting herself, they don't. So you need,
Mm.
and again, outside of Willow, we don't really have that in AEW.
No.
That woman that the little girls are gonna flock to, that the little boys will have a crush on. You know, like, we don't have that.
Mm. Mm. Mm.
Mercedes has a chance to be that and fill a very important void that not even Tony Storm necessarily had.
Very true. Very true. That is that. Oh, that would be definitely one thing that Tony Storm would probably be disconnected from the
Mhm.
younger girls in that kind of space as well. You know, I think it does have massive potential to make Mercedes great again. I wish I didn't say it like that. Damn.
Oh my
Um,
gosh.
but,
Wow. Wow.
oh, God.
Are you gonna wear a
Oh,
red hat too?
don't,
Yikes.
no. I love Mercedes. No, anyway.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. But yeah. Right. I just cancelled myself.
Wow. Whew.
Ah! um, but yeah, we're gonna get back the Miss Monet that we all love, that we all love, and it not be this whole thing of as soon as Mercedes comes out, oh god, here she is again, pushed too much, overpaid, blah 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 blah. I think it has the potential to be something amazing. Time will tell. And I think it might even be something that needs to be done. I wouldn't say immediately, but if they take too long, it's not going to work.
Sure.
In my mind, especially with it being the story of her losing championships and losing her confidence. That's happening at the moment, so it needs to be jumped upon um, quite soon. But I definitely feel it has the potential to be an amazing story of Mercedes becoming that big major female star and even #1 star, and undeniable and loved by all the fans, and not just the heel that thinks they're the greatest, like an
Right.
MJF, for example.
Right.
MJF is the type of person that, you know, the fans love him when he comes out, but they love to hate him.
Hmm.
And I don't think that type of approach with Mercedes in this moment, or with that, you know, that as the end goal will work. I think it needs
Yeah.
to be, we're trying to get everyone to love Mercedes.
Hmm.
Um, and the part about Harley Cameron, Willow Nightingale is, it would be perfect because we've had the
Yeah.
rivalry with Willow, we've had the whole thing with Harley Cameron and the puppy and all of
Right.
that, and Harley being obsessed with Mercedes at one point and all of
Hmm.
that.
Hmm.
For them to
Yeah.
help her overcome Tekla and her group as well would
Hmm.
make a lot of sense. Make a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It kind of writes itself in a way. So I think it would work definitely
Yeah.
in a very good way. This leads me on. I love when the segues happen so naturally. This leads me
Yes.
on to another woman who has now found herself two people to help her out. We turn ourselves over to WWE, of course, and we're talking about Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill, of course, is the current women's champion in WWE on SmackDown, and is set to face Rhea Ripley at WrestleMania. They had a confrontation of words again in the ring on Friday's SmackDown just gone. But a twist came on Friday when B-Fab and Michin decided to confront Jade as she was leaving the ring. But of course, it turned out to be that they came actually to help Jade beat down Rhea Ripley, and the three of them stood tall. And in a way, while we don't have a specific name for them yet, the IWC is already calling them Jade's new baddies, as she did have the baddies in AEW back in the day. Gerard, do you feel as though this works? I kind of saw this coming. I know I mentioned it a few before. I mentioned it on another show that I was on, that this had the potential to happen. But do you feel as though this works, and does this help Jade going into WrestleMania?
So it's interesting. I heard rumblings about this group being called the Takeover. I don't know if that's actually factual or not, but I think that would be very, very interesting. Here's the thing that's missing, and it's interesting. We don't usually get this from WWE, but maybe it's too early. I'd love an explanation of how we went from Jade beating Michin last week to this week. Now they're partnering together. Is it one of these, if you can't beat them, join them kinds of things? What did Jade have to tell them to convince them, hey, let's work together? I want to hear that. And so if we're going to hear that in the next week or so, then okay, it was a turn that's got people talking. Now, I think this is very good for Michin. This is very good for BFAB. I think that they've both needed something that would get them out of backstage and, in front of people on a more regular basis. Does this mean that we'll get to see them win some matches? Hopefully. Does this mean that they're just going to be attacking people who don't like Jade? I hope not. I think, one of the things that we're lacking right now in WWE is a women's faction. So I think something like this could really be a thing. I hope that, again, for BFAB and for Michin, it turns into something special. I do think that this changes the conversation for the WrestleMania match, though. Because I think with them, we now have a very clear way that Jade leaves Vegas with the WWE Championship. Because and I hope I'm not jumping ahead when I go here, but if Jade loses with this faction, then why did we put them together? Jade has to be more powerful with this group than she is on her own. And, it's the first time that she's been in full-on singles competition with, as the leader of a group. Of course, she was part of the Big Three a couple of years ago, which everybody loved. She was kind of clearly the rookie, and I put that in air quotes, of the three. But certainly, that made sense. Now her leading her own faction could very well be a thing. I like it. I just look forward to the explanation. And hopefully we'll get that in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah. I think we will expect to see that maybe play out on Friday. The easiest and simplest way to explain it is the can't beat them, join them type of situation, but we still need to get it a bit more specific to those characters and what's been happening with them, because the whole time Jade's been a champion, for however 100+ days or whatever it is now, her rivals have been those two. Sprinkle a bit of Jordan Grace in there, but it's been those two. So it kind of feels as though, what? And as much as I expected it to happen, I kind of still would have expected a bit more of a slow burn or a bit more of a storytelling, and then get the crescendo of it all happening. It was noticed in one segment, I think the previous week on SmackDown, Jade was talking to BFAB in the background. That was noticed. So there was that was happening, but I still feel as though that probably should have simmered for a little bit longer, or maybe BFAB had a crisis of whether she helped Jade or Michin during their match, maybe something like that would have worked. I think for me this has happened too early though. For me, I think this turn should have happened at WrestleMania.
I can see that.
For me, it would have made a little bit more sense. It's something that our good friend Mex has done a video about his thoughts on this whole thing. He said the very same thing of it should have happened at WrestleMania. It just would have been a bigger moment and it would have made a bit more sense. It now kind of feels a little bit more predictable as to how the match is going to play out. Even the run, we've got what 2-3 weeks left until Mania. That means Rhea Ripley's going to face Michin, beat Michin, going to face B-Fab, beat B-Fab, get beat down in between by Jade Cargill, and then we'll have the match, and we kind of have a feeling what that's going to be. But let me throw this in here. There has been the talk of, and this is just, I think, I don't know if it's a rumor or it's been talked about, but the possibility of Rhea needing help in order to beat Jade. Where does that help come from? Io Sky's a strong possibility. The other one that's out there, and my optimism has kind of dwindled a little bit of this happening, but give me something to think about. Bianca could be another one to kind of bring us out. And that then means as well, with that being a possibility, it then gives us the opportunity to believe that either one of them could walk out as the champion. Jade could retain. Rhea Ripley could end up winning because she gets help from some other people, whoever those other two will be. So there's ways it could go, but it does still feel as though it's kind of like, well, if we're putting this group together, it would be absolutely pointless for them to be together going into WrestleMania 2 weeks before and Jade not winning with their help or because of them or their influence or something. So for me, that's why it feels a little bit too early. It's nice to see them all together. As you said, it's great for B-Fab, it's great for Michin, it's great for Jade to have this. Been waiting for something like this for her for a while, and I hope it plays out. I'm very intrigued, as much as I am into wrestling, into fashion too. I'm very intrigued to see their photo sheets together because they all do brilliantly anyway. So that's going to be interesting. But in terms of our expectations, predictability, all that kind of stuff that we love about being fans of wrestling, it kind of feels as though there is a foregone conclusion as to what the outcome is going to be. But this is wrestling. We don't know. Who knows what happens? We'll see. We'll see. It has probably happened to a couple of times in the last week. A title changes just before Mania. I don't know if they have made sense to me completely. We saw Cody Rhodes win back the WWE Championship. R-Truth and Damian Priest are now tag team champions as well. There's a possibility, it may not happen, but there's a possibility that the Usos move their tag team championships to the Vision at the match next week. What are your thoughts on R-Truth becoming tag team champion and these tag team championships changing hands weeks before Mania?
So it's interesting, and there's a whole conversation to be had about the road to WrestleMania, which we all tend to talk about just as much as WrestleMania itself. Relative to these title changes and R-Truth becoming a champion, et cetera, right now, it very much feels like the middle of the WrestleMania card is still being developed.
For sure.
And so there are things that are happening on a weekly basis that I'm like, that's supposed to happen at Mania. The tag team turmoil gauntlet thing where Damian Priest and R-Truth win, that should have led to a title match at WrestleMania, right? Unless we're trying to do some wild match between the Wyatt Six and MFTs. I don't get it. I guess I get Cody winning because Cody versus Randy Orton is the bigger match, as opposed to Drew versus Randy Orton. Now, I'll tell you this. Don't get nervous when it comes to these women's tag team championships. I do think Yeah, don't get nervous. I know the people were getting nervous based on all this, like, oh Lord, are the Bellas going to win the titles? Oh Lord, you know, will Charlotte and Alexa? I think particularly after the news of next week in MSG, Bailey and Lyra getting a title shot. I think all of this is leading to a multi-woman tag team title match with all of these previous contenders, you know, and maybe they go hard and make that the ladder match. Because a women's ladder match for the tag titles is new ground at a WrestleMania. And so I think they could do that and it work if they feel like they've got the right people. I don't know who would be the high flyer in that one because that tends to make things work, but who knows? You could have all kinds of things happening there. I think at the very least, you know, the Irresistible Forces are going to make it to WrestleMania as champions. But all of these title changes, I get the idea that you're trying to make the road to WrestleMania unpredictable and make every week must-watch television. I get that. But my question is, if we are, you know, 27, 26, 25 days out of WrestleMania and you're still trying to sell tickets, people need to know what the card is. And outside of the main events, you know, we found out last night, okay, we got an Intercontinental title match with Becky and AJ. But I'm like, the rest of this card, the rest of this, mind you, 2-day card is very much up in the air. And it feels like WrestleMania is not supposed to be fly by night, let's figure it out in 2 weeks. It's supposed to be, okay, we, you know, 2 weeks out, 3 weeks out, you know, we should have most of our matches that we're aware of so we know what we're excited about. And extra stuff gets added as we get closer. But right now, it still feels like the bulk of these 2 days, somebody's still trying to figure it out. And I don't know how you move tickets when you're still trying to figure it out. Don't know.
For me, I'm not too fussed about not the whole card not being there. We are in that space where, you know, the main events and the ticket selling matches are there. You know, the Randy Orton, CM Punk, Roman, you know, and a couple others as well. We're kind of feeling as though, you know, we kind of have an idea that, you know, Jacob Fatu and
Drew McIntyre.
Jeez, why did that name? Okay. You know, it's happening. We know about the ladies or the you know, the title matches with the ladies, and it's not so bad that we don't know every single match, but it does feel in the background as though WWE don't know every single match. That's the feeling. I think that's the part where it's kind of like, I feel the reason why I'm not too worried about it, you know, we're not knowing every single match so far, is because it makes us want to watch the show every single week, and we might find a new development this week and next week, and a new match, you know, the following week, and so on. But for me, pertaining to like the title changes, it's that also that kind of feels maybe desperate or too early. Maybe these matches or these title changes should have happened at Mania. We're missing. It's almost like we're adding these things in. And as you said, the road to WrestleMania kind of feels a little bit desperate in a way. There's good and bad to it. There's good and bad. I'm not too sure where I sit, whether it's good or if it's bad. Yeah. It's a bit of both. I'm not sure why, you know, R-Truth and Damian Priest had to win before Mania. Where does that go? I'm not sure where that one goes. As you said, Cody Rhodes winning, we can make sense of it. I don't completely agree with it, but we can make sense of it. Lash and Nia winning the women's tag team, it made sense because of, you know, we needed to use Rhea to push that match. Right. But then some of the others, I'm just like, not too sure. There is also now a question with R-Truth that this could be a title run for as a thank you, or some kind of honor, because it's possibly his last run in WWE. What do you say to that news, or that possibility?
If that's the case, then let's enjoy it. I think, if you think back to last year in June when the whole contract situation came up, and R-Truth suddenly became the most popular wrestler in the business. We have not seen since then the kind of attention to him on screen that was circling when that whole signing happened, and when he cut his hair, and when he's like, I'm Ron Killings now, and the truth has set me free, and all that. We've not gotten anything from that except, I'm Ron Cena again. So I think even though the team has seemingly been thrown together and they haven't made enough noise about the connection that they had formerly in Judgment Day, et cetera, et cetera, I think it's well-deserved. I think it's equally well-deserved for Damian Priest, who has just been steady Eddie and, hasn't had a championship since he lost the world title. So I think it's well-deserved for R-Truth. Again, what does it mean going into WrestleMania? I don't know, because I don't know that I expect makeshift teams to do well, but maybe this is the road that leads to a larger story with those two. And if this is his last run, then let's enjoy it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. Another person who we want and expect to see at Mania is Carmelo Hayes. Banger match after banger match. The Open Challenge isn't so much a thing anymore, but at the same time, we're still seeing him, defend his title almost every single week. The last one was again against Ilya Dragunov, an insane, phenomenal match once again. But there has been a question on the internet asking whether Carmelo Hayes having banger matches every week is enough, and does he need now a storyline to kind of back up matches, or something that takes him to WrestleMania, or something to give us a bit more of a confidence that he's going to have something substantial to do at WrestleMania?
I don't necessarily. Well, let me back up and say there is a storyline in place. I don't think the people have recognized it. The storyline has been the Open Challenge.
Right.
That's the story. The story is, let's see how great he is by defending against people from NXT and TNA and AAA and Raw and SmackDown. Like, I think sometimes people look so much for a love-hate kind of situation that they're like, there's not a story. No, the story is that this is a great athlete who's putting on bangers. That's a great story to tell. I love the fact, and let me go here. And this is what people are missing. That's why I'm here. You, as the fans, should be tired of Black people being typecast. And so what I'm loving about this is that we finally have a Black man holding a championship that the people love strictly for his athleticism. He didn't come out and cut a great promo. He didn't come out and be uber charismatic. He didn't come out and drop, jargon and prove to be super urban. He is confident. He is him. And he goes out and has great matches every week, and he holds a championship. We don't have that being presented. And I think that's such a win. Like Javon Evans we have right now, and Javon is certainly our highlight reel kind of, one would argue Kofi 2.0, but on a elevated level. I love that. I love that, Trick is in his era right now. I love that Oba has a main event caliber match, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But a Carmelo Hayes gets to walk into WrestleMania with a history of incredible matches, which means whoever stands across from him at WrestleMania has to have a banger of a match. So personally, I thought they were saving him and Ilya for WrestleMania, because what they gave us on SmackDown, good Lord, you know, and they do that all the time. Good grief. So I don't know who you have that's going to give us that caliber of a match at a WrestleMania. But to me, that puts the pressure on whoever they pick as an opponent. So I love that Carmelo Hayes is being recognized as an incredible wrestler who defends his championship against anybody. This, to me, is your Kyle Fletcher in AEW. This is your banger of a guy who you put across from them, let him defend his title, and let what they do in the ring stand. Not everything, and I know this is going to go against some people's thought of pro wrestling, but not everything needs a I hate you, I love you story. What's good about this business is when you can have something that actually is athletic. That's why we enjoy watching this. Yes, we love stories and promos, but it all happens in the ring. And if the stories and promos lead to a subpar match, listen, let me go back to a couple of years ago, WrestleMania 40, when we finally got the brothers Uso against each other. The lead up was great. The opening promos were great. The vignette leading into the match was great, but the match did not deliver. We have a reputation of a Carmelo Hayes that's going to deliver. That's a story, and we should be proud of that.
Most definitely, most definitely. And I think that is, for me, the story too, you know. And I know that we always kind of want this perfect scenario, or the way that we feel the perfect scenario should be. And it should be some heated rivalry with promos and all the rest of it. And that would be great. It would make it a little bit better. But at the same time, as you said, you know, we've got this guy who's coming out and showing us what he can do. That is enough. No one's turning around saying, no, we don't like this match. And, oh, no, the matches aren't that great. They're undeniable.
Yes.
And that's all we need. That is all we need. You mentioned him. But let's mention the other him, that is OBA FEMI. OBA FEMI again topples Brock Lesnar last night on Monday Night Raw. In as quickly as you can say, do you feel this has any implement or any cause, any influence, is the word I'm looking for, on the outcome of their WrestleMania match?
Yes and no. I mean, I think, remember I said last week, you know, we're going to need Brock to have some sort of come up. And so I think in the next couple of weeks, we're going to see Brock, you know, get a one up on OBA FEMI. Again, seeing OBA so dominant is something special, but there's something that the IWC is starting to talk about, and I noticed it. And to me, this is what could become an issue. If you go back and watch, you'll see after Brock gets clotheslined outside, you know, he's like just looking at him, and OBA is talking his stuff, and it's great. And then Brock gets up to a point where he's standing and he's in the aisle, and Paul Heyman's like, hey, like, you know, don't go after him or whatever. And Brock starts talking, and Brock calls OBA boy. I need y'all to understand something. Now, I'm going to say this. The world of pro wrestling, I don't know that everybody understands this, that not everything that happens is scheduled to happen. Oftentimes people, you know, when they're ad-libbing, when they're in moments, they're saying things that they were not necessarily instructed to say. You know, last night, you know, there were a bunch of expletives dropped by Seth Rollins that they had to bleep out, and F words and all this other stuff. But that one statement of boy, listen to me. First of all, WWE doesn't want to play up on that. They don't want to play up on that. They want to just let that go and not acknowledge it. Do not write that into the story. Do not. Because if this turns into Triple H Booker T from WrestleMania 19, there will be havoc. Let us just go with the idea of what Kofi shared as the Avenger. It's kind of like we know what Oba represents for us right now. We understand that. I mean, let the rest of the world look at two powerhouses. Let the rest of the world look at the heir apparent to Brock. But do not, please, ma'am, please, sir, don't lean in on that. Let that be one of those things that we go, yo, we're pressing a line here, but don't, commentary need not mention it. I don't want anybody, no. Because if this turns to that, this turns to something else. And if it turns to something else, we have a problem. We have a problem. I don't like Brock saying what he said. Because the term boy was also used last night in reference to Roman Reigns, calling him his young boy, that being CM Punk. And again, that term was not a term of endearment. No. But because he called him a young boy, you know, there were no racial connotations to that. But a Midwestern, big farm-fed white man calling a big black man boy, not a good move. So while I don't expect an apology, I need them just to act like it didn't happen and let us do the work on that. Because if this turns into that publicly, if they start talking about that, we lose the plot. And I don't want it to turn into that. I don't. But I noticed it. Others noticed it. Yeah. All the more reason that Oba needs to trash Brock.
I also noticed it straight away. I was like, yeah, let that not happen again.
Let it not happen again.
Let that just not happen again. In terms of, you know, what happened in the ring, Oba, you know, overcoming Brock again very easily, quite dominantly. I almost feel as though if Brock doesn't get his lick back next week or the next time they meet, I'll be worried that the outcome is going to be Brock wins.
Correct.
Simple as that. But at the same time, I feel as though maybe we are kind of, you know, there's a possibility of we're still playing up the Oba dominance to give us that hope, to show us that, you know, Oba is that guy.
Yeah.
Brock will get his lick back and then we get the eventual win. And Oba goes over. I also think that even as Brock Lesnar, the man, the businessman, whatever else, I don't think he would have allowed himself to be toppled twice, you know, in 2 weeks. If he's not willing to go to be put over. I mean, not put over, but to be beaten at Mania as well. So again, we're in this space of unpredictability. I love being in this space when it comes to pro wrestling. So, you know, it's a good thing. It's nerve-wracking, but then it's positive all at the same time. But to go back to the point where Brock mentioned the word boy, calling Oba a boy,
made me very uncomfortable.
Yeah, big time. And it's like you said, you know, it's a funny place to be because it's not like, you know, as you said, don't necessarily need some public apology from WWE. But at the same time, I asked the question, I even ask it to myself as well as I'm saying this. Why not?
Here's why. I feel like this is just, I feel like there's just so much great momentum around two powerhouses, you know, that if we bring in, you know, here's the thing, issues like race and religion never play well into pro wrestling. Never. Because what we're going to end up with is much like what we saw at the start of the show, where people are going to come out and start saying crazy things. Here's what I think we have to also consider. The big part about pro wrestling is that it causes people who are diverse, who probably wouldn't hang out or be connected in a certain way, to find a thing that they have in common and work well together. Right now, we have everybody, babies, boys, girls of all colors doing the strut when Oba walks out. They're all behind Oba. They're chanting Oba's name from San Antonio to Boston. They're doing it. If you add in very publicly an issue that brings about division, Oba doesn't survive that well. And I need people to be able to view Oba without viewing him as a, now please don't misunderstand what I'm saying. He is a man of color, absolutely. But if you just present him as an incredible athlete, people can rock with that because they want to see somebody topple the beast. God, catch me, guys. They want to see somebody topple the beast. They may not be that interested in a black man toppling the beast. So we don't need to introduce the obvious. I need y'all to understand, because when it comes to pro wrestling, people have to see themselves one way or the other. So whether it's they see their color or you go past that, you extend past that, where they just see a superhero. When you have a superhero coming to save you, you don't really care what color he is. And I don't need that introduced into this. Let Oba be the superhero that's going to overcome Brock, period. Let those of us who know, right? So let Kofi, feel avenged. Let Lashley feel avenged. Let Big E feel avenged. Let them feel avenged without them ever having to loop all the fans in. Because I'm telling you, what earlier in this show showed us is that people aren't mature enough to be able to walk that line. So this is just the superhero. Do not play into their immaturity. And those of us who know, we're secretly rude. Listen, Kofi Mania worked because he was an underdog. But for people who look like us, it meant something different. We got the same scenario in front of us, guys. Don't mess this up.
True. It is that whole fine line of turning it into something it doesn't need to be, which then detracts from what it is. And in the long run, I think you're correct in saying that, Oba doesn't necessarily come out in the way that we want him to, or it doesn't work out for him in the long run, or whatever it is, because if we turn this into the black man versus the white man on a public level,
right?
It's detrimental. It's great that we can have that.
Correct.
It's great that we can have it. It's brilliant that we can have that in our space. But if that becomes part of the story, or even if the WWE publicly, say some kind of apology about what Brock Lesnar said, it will then, without it being the storyline, it would then become the public thing, and it would distract from everything that we want to see happen, or maybe even what WWE are trying to accomplish with OBA FEMI, and even just from what you're saying about everyone doing the march and all the rest of it. When he was coming out just on last night's show, they skipped to the crowd. You saw the young white boys doing it. You saw moms doing it. You saw everyone, just so many different, diverse number of people and types of people, all doing it, and that tells you everything. And and in respect to all the other top stars, black stars in the WWE. I think everyone is now at that point where it's not about them being black.
Correct.
Javon, Oba, Trick, Carmelo. It's not about them being black.
Right.
While they will all never hide the fact or won't be apologetic or are unapologetic about being. It's not about them being black. So when the fans that are connecting with them are connecting with them just because they're good. Simple as.
Right.
And it's something that we always wanted. It's something that we, especially with the NXT guys that have come up, it's something that we wanted to see happen, and that's why we were glad that it took them another year to develop even more on NXT, to become undeniable, to come through onto the main roster and just hit the heights that they're at straight away without anyone questioning anything. So yeah, to then turn something like this into racial, political, divisional, whatever, it wouldn't be great. Not the best thing for Brock to say. It can't be overlooked necessarily, but at the same time, it can't be magnified either. For the greater good, I guess, of what we're trying to see happen between these two. Something else I want to mention just before we go, I'm going to put you here, Gerard, for you to speak about the last event Arshay did this past weekend, I believe it was. Just talk me through without giving me any spoilers, but give me something to work with.
Yeah, shout out to all of the beautiful things that are happening with us at Arshay. From a brand new venue, live from Bloom Studios, which this venue, wow. Like, the venue is so special. It is, known throughout the Charlotte community for its impact to art and entertainment. And so, again, one of the things that I've loved about what we're doing at Arshay is taking pro wrestling to venues that you might not expect, and being able to really make something special out of it. And so, it's just special. Mark Henry, WWE Hall of Famer, who is also a member of the decision board, was a part of the show. He put out an amazing tweet honoring our women's champion, Charity King. Arshay is very much a product that I think a Mark Henry looks forward to, in that, we get to present pro wrestling as a vibe for the culture, and he gets to really help and mold and shape a lot of people. It was an incredible show. 3 big title matches. The tag titles were up for grabs. The women's title was up for grabs. And the Arshay Men's Championship was up for grabs. And that turned into a very wild situation at the end, which is just nuts. So I'm trying not to give you too much of the way of spoilers, but I will tell you that you can watch it. It did stream live on the Arshay Wrestling Patreon page. So if you want to go to ArshayWrestling.com, you can go ahead and purchase the replay right now. Check out all that's happening in Arshay Wrestling. What a start to 2026 for us. And the best is absolutely yet to come.
Amazing stuff. Gerard, just let the people know where else they can find you and what else you are doing over the next few weeks.
For sure. You can check me out at Bonnerfied across all of the social spaces: Instagram, Facebook, X, TikTok. You can check out my podcast when I'm talking about things other than wrestling, if you're interested in that. It's called Bonnerfied Conversations. It's available right now wherever you stream or download your podcast. Brand new episode just dropped today, which I think will serve as just good life encouragement for you. All kinds of very cool things that are happening, and we're working on some new content for you guys as well. So make sure, again, you're following me on all of the social spaces at Bonnerfied.
Amazing. Of course, you guys know you can join us here on a Tuesdays on the Black Wrestling Alliance YouTube channel. You can also, of course, find me on the Black Wrestling Alliance Instagram page. And guess what? We're also on TikTok now. So you'll catch all of the clips from WrstlXtra on our new TikTok page, Black Wrestling Alliance. Find us on there as well. Every now and again, you might see me pop up on X. Maybe. But TikTok is the place to be. That's the new spot. Find all the clips of WrstlXtra on there. There may be some new content coming from there as well. So just make sure you follow Black Wrestling Lights on TikTok and on Instagram. And we will see you on here, Black Wrestling Lights YouTube channel next time.